Hi, everybody. I'm Dakeem Lyles, and welcome back to another episode of Casting Directors Say What? Each month, I spotlight an amazing casting director in the industry because a lot of what we do is misunderstood. And I hope that this series can shine a light on all the wonderful, hardworking casting directors out there that really help bring other people's dreams to reality. Now, today I'm a little excited because I have a very special guest who was one of my mentors. Introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anne Chapman. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm a big fan of Daikeem.
Thanks, and what type of things do you cast?
So, being in Virginia, a lot of times I'm a location casting director for projects that come to Virginia.
Hmm?
So, there have been an awful lot of period pieces that shoot in Virginia, and I've gotten I guess, good at working on period pieces. But I also teach at Virginia Commonwealth University in the School of the Arts. And so this summer we did 12 short films in 8 weeks, 65 actors. Every actor was paid. So I work on things that are, local to Virginia. Virginia filmmakers making their own whole project here, or stuff that comes into town.
Wow, now period pieces, that sounds like a lot of research work, right?
It is a lot of research work, and I love history. My dad's a historian. I grew up in a house where, we were always talking about history, visiting different places around the world, and understanding uh, how history plays into what we're living every day.
Yeah.
So I think I was the right gal to meet up with a lot of period pieces. I also love when you're having to match an actor to a historical figure. That can be a really fun search. I
And
enjoy that a lot.
challenge too, right?
It is a challenge. You're right. It is. It's sort of like, when you're doing a puzzle, as a casting director, you're always doing a puzzle. Those historical films where you're matching someone, those are the hardest puzzle pieces to match in. They're not the edges, they're not the corner pieces. They're the really
And
hard
those middle pieces where you're like, I have no idea, but I'm gonna find it.
ones. Exactly.
Now tell us a little bit about how you got started in casting.
So I am from the Midwest, and I went to the University of Kansas, which is a really good theater program, and I have an acting directing degree from Kansas. And my last year in a directing class, we were able to cast our own projects, and that was the first time I'd ever sort of been on the other side of that table,
Mhm.
and I was just fascinated by it, and it opened my eyes in so many ways that I didn't even understand. And literally from that day, I was like, this is where I want to be. And I was very lucky for the mentors that I had that were able to sort of put me in contact with someone that was able to help me. So I spent the year after college in China at the People's Art Theater in Beijing.
Ooh.
And while I was there, Alan Pakula, who directed Sophie's Choice and All the President's Men, his producer was scouting a film to shoot in China, and she was absolutely lovely and hired me as sort of a PA, carry the suitcases.
Mhm.
But that led to a short gig at her office with Alex Gordon, who is an amazing old school casting director. And so I was super lucky because from the very beginning, I was getting to watch from like wow levels.
Yeah.
Uh, and so as you know, you're always getting your next job from your previous job and just working that way.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Now, the industry has changed so much and casting has changed so much in over the years, and it's still starting to make a big change again.
Yeah.
What's kept you in it? Why do you love it so much that you just keep doing it? Because just like acting, I try to explain to actors sometimes, it's just as hard for casting directors as it is for you guys in this industry too. We cast something and then it's over with and we got to find the next thing to
Another
cast.
job. Yeah. So here's the thing. No matter what the technology has been, witnessing good acting and being able to recognize good acting is what it's about. Whether it was, in a Greek theater watching original plays back in the day before it got dark,
Yeah.
or is it the Belasco Theater where they started putting the lights so that you could have plays later in the evening. Whatever the technology is to get the good actors in front of people and connect the right actor with the right role, casting directors will navigate, and we're really nimble about having to navigate all of that technology. I remember being just as confused by a 3/4 inch machine.
Yes. Those, oh God, remember those. Remember
It's,
having to edit on those. Those,
I know.
my God. Can you believe the stuff that we did? Because I went from 3/4 and then it was DVDs and then it was
Yes.
DVD and the CD, and you got to finalize. You didn't finalize the disc, Dakeem. Oh no.
Yeah. And if you only had a certain amount of time and tape, you would literally roll back over when you were recording an actor. Because I've always had to record actors and send them on,
Mhm.
even when I was working in Chicago or New York, there's always somebody else who wants to see the actor, right?
Yes.
And you're like, I don't love that take. Let's rewind. And you weren't even saving the bad takes. You were just making
Oh,
the
we
decision. No,
deleted that.
yeah, exactly.
My God, I remember I would have to deliver some of those 3/4 inches to like different places after the casting. They're like, Dakeem, you just go and drop it off. I'm like, where is it? Broadway and Lafayette? Oi.
Yeah, exactly. When I was in New York, I lived across the street from Duart,
Oh,
and and I also worked for a director producer, and so sometimes I would literally drop off the film that we filmed that day right to Duart, and you could see everything else that was delivered that day when you it was so cool.
those were the days.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you talked a little bit about your experience with casting. What advice would you have for any aspiring casting directors out there? Because I gotta say, and I think it was, now that I'm looking back on it, we were really lucky to get into the business when we did. I mean, I can't even imagine now what it's like trying to get, because there are no casting offices really, there's no place
Right.
to walk in. So what type of advice would you have for aspiring casting directors out there who listen to us speak and are like, wow, how can I?
So listen, read, do your research, and be helpful. Be like, I know that there's no such thing as sort of free internships anymore, which is a good thing. You should either be getting college credit or being paid for it. Um, but you can get paid, or if you're a student, offer to help out at a session, even if it's just checking the actors in when we're back to in-person sessions, or helping a casting director with whatever little task they need. Then you can start hearing the conversation, like right there. No matter the technology, the conversation is usually the same when you're discussing actors. And so um, I'm sorry, but there are more avenues available to people that are interested in casting now than there used to be, just because of the internet and podcasts like your own, being able to listen to everything, read everything, the trades, definitely read the trades. And then the Casting Society of America is a great resource. You don't have to be a member to be able to look at some of their stuff, and
Is.
follow casting directors on Instagram. And there are so many other opportunities now. Even IMDb, that wasn't a thing when we started out.
No. Remember the
So
Ross reports and stuff, that book that you would go through and you'd be like,
yeah,
who's what and where? I could miss
completely.
that book.
I agree. I had one in Chicago and one in London. And at Alan Pakula's office, there was so he was Midtown in, I think it must have been Lincoln Circle. There was like a Blockbuster, and he would literally call to ask he knew the manager there, to look on the back of a VHS to read the credits. So
Oh, that's
he
awesome.
made up his own IMDb
I
that way.
love that. I love that. Now, what's your perspective on the current state of the casting industry right now? And what do you think actors who are pursuing this for the first time, or currently pursuing this, or just getting back into it after stepping away, what do you think they should understand about where the casting industry is now?
So I am of two minds about this. I think it has become way more inclusive of actors that maybe are not represented. They can audition for things themselves that they find themselves via Actors Access or other platforms.
Isn't that great
So
too? I didn't have that when I was pursuing acting.
no, not so that is amazing. But it also means that so I'm in Virginia, which is considered the Mid-Atlantic or part of the Southeast. But then when I put a role out that's very much shooting in Virginia with a specific rate and it's local and there's no travel, I will get submissions from all over the nation.
Yeah.
So I understand that they want to be in front of casting directors' eyes to get in, into their mind for other projects. So that takes more time for casting directors to go through everything because you get so many more submissions than you used to. But also, so many more actors get to submit to those roles. So I haven't, the teeter totter is kind of even right now in figuring out, is that good or bad? Please only as actors submit to things that you can actually do. Like, can you actually be at that location on those dates for that amount of money? And also, are you right for the role? Is the right art? Do you and the role meet up in a good space? And don't don't submit for it if it's just on a lark, you
Yeah,
know.
like I tell actors, don't submit just to be seen, because when we post a job and we have laser focus for what we're looking for. And I know a lot of actors sometimes they'll be like, oh, I know that Keem. Let me just remind him that I'm around. And I'll be like, oh, so and so, she's got to be right for this. And then you look at it and you're like, why did you submit? Because that was 5 minutes out of my time now that it took away from me looking at somebody else who's right for the job. And then we start to think, well, how often are they paying attention? What kind of actor are they that they made this type of mistake, you know?
I agree. I agree. And I know that it's people that really just are trying to figure it out and you'll
Yeah,
get there in your career. And so you don't do that for very long, right?
yeah,
You'll learn pretty quick. But just for actors to even have the opportunity to see breakdowns the way you can see breakdowns now that you didn't used to have the opportunity to see,
yeah,
there are a whole bunch of actors who either started acting as the pandemic started or have graduated from school during the pandemic who have never had in-person sessions.
yeah. Isn't
Like,
that crazy? I never thought
why
about that.
they
Wow.
there's a whole group, there's a whole cohort of people that only have done their first round via self-tape and then virtual callbacks. The concept of being in the room, they haven't experienced it.
Yeah, and there's so much that can happen in the room, you know?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, what's we've been talking about casting, and one of the reasons why I started this series is just because I would watch award shows and I'd see everybody getting thanked, and I'd be like, boy, we are just not a thought in anyone's head whatsoever. Or then I would hear like something that someone said about casting, and I was like, that's not what we do at all. What's like one misunderstanding about being a casting director that really just gets under your skin and that you wish people would understand a little bit more?
I get frustrated when people consider you a gatekeeper. I don't I I don't agree with that. I think the amount of opportunities that we have the ability to grant or give access to is way more than the gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that there are some wackadoo actors that
Yeah.
you do have to, out of self-preservation, possibly be a gatekeeper there. But if you are a talented actor, that is right for the project, it is an opportunity. Like, you're the gate opener
Right.
as opposed to the gatekeeper. So, but going back to your comment about not being recognized, I just kind of think of it as whatever your mode of transportation is, whether it's your legs or a bicycle or a car, you just use it every day and you somewhat take it for granted
Yeah.
until it's not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes casting directors are that way, like work and work and work and work and work, and everyone just takes it for granted what you're doing for them, and they don't realize until they don't have it.
Yeah.
Um, so I wish that it was in the front of people's brain space more to thank people for that. I think it's getting there, with uh, Emmys and BAFTA awards and BIFA awards and other awards that are recognizing casting. We're getting there, and the Academy it'll be soon. I have confidence it'll be soon.
Well, and that I'm glad you made that point too, because there are a lot of times when I've been in the room, and sometimes I felt like I've been dismissed as just the small part of the process. And I always think, but remember, you got to think other people behind the scenes, that the reason why you call this actor back is because of the work that we did with them in the room.
Right.
The
Agreed.
work that we and did together that inspired a great performance that they got to themselves with our guidance. And just don't poo-poo us away. I love your performance. Well, yeah, you got us to thank for that a little bit, and
Yeah, yeah.
the actor, of course.
And I'm definitely of the opinion, my friend Erica Arvold mentioned this one time, and I thought about it, and I've been watching it ever since. And this was years ago. I definitely think that every actor that auditions for a role, and particularly those that are in the callback and the director works with, has some essence of their work in the final realization of the project.
Yeah.
The role was formed, in the end by that actor that appears on screen, but there were so many things that got them there, and that was help from other actors who were working on that role, the director seeing an actor work on that role and become, you know more specific in their directions, or taking on board something that they saw an actor do. So,
Yeah.
and I have also found that if an actor has a good experience in an audition, even if they don't get the role, and even if they know 5 minutes into the callback that they're not a right fit for that project, if they are treated well, and the whole entire casting process, and I don't want people to feel like they've been processed, so I don't like to use
Right.
that word. um they
Past
are the biggest
experience.
experience, perfect. They're the biggest fans of that project because
Mhm.
they had a good experience in that room. And even if they're not in the project, they're talking about it and getting people to see it. So it's it's good to make sure that everyone is having a positive experience on the project, with
Yeah,
the
and
project.
that's how you get, really, especially during the audition experience, that's how you get actors to sort of relax and play, is that you want them to know that when they're in the room with you or on an online self-tape thing with you, that as a casting director, we're really there to support you. Our job is to show you in the best light, and different facets of that light too. I always try to explain actors, when I give you another chance, it's not because you're doing anything bad. It's because I really want the person who's going to hire you to understand the different levels of your talent and what it might be like to work with you. Do you have range? Because the
Yeah.
audition process is always so organic anyway. Like, the project is never really set. It might change because of something that you do in the audition room that we show to the director, and it's like, oh, well, maybe I want this project to go in that direction now.
Right. That is so true. And you need to make it a safe space for those actors. It's not a finished thing yet. It's like a rehearsal for theater, and you want people to feel safe to explore that. And I'm excited when actors feel very when you say, "All right, let's try it one more time. Are you open to playing?" And they say
Yeah.
yes. I'm like, "Yay!" That's awesome. And sometimes we can recognize an actor that we've known for years, and that more is available that
Yeah.
the director is not seeing. So
Oh,
if you can
God.
nudge them in this direction or give a particular direction that opens them up a little bit more, and then the director can see their range, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing sometimes being in a room. I've been in a couple of callbacks where, you just got to let the director do his
Right.
thing. And sometimes it's just like, I'm like, if you could just let me explain it to them, because I know this actor can give you what
Get
they
there.
do.
Yeah.
You're just not giving them a chance. But then sometimes it's just like they just not vibing together and you just got to let it go. You got to let it
And
go.
you know what? That might not have been the right role for that actor anyway if they weren't vibing with that director.
Exactly.
But I also love that every actor that meets a group of director, producer, writer, whomever, they're not just auditioning for that one particular role in that one particular project. Everybody's working on multiple things at the same time, and so you as a casting director have uh, helped with that opportunity for that actor to be seen by a whole bunch of other people for other projects, and that especially in a smaller location where the pool of actors is smaller,
Mhm.
you definitely will see a director meet somebody on a role that on a project that they weren't cast in, but they can't stop thinking about them, and they're in the next film they're the first one on the list of who they want to see.
Yeah, like we get actor requests from directors and people on the other side of the production all the time. Have this casting. Could you bring this particular person into? Because I want to see who they are. I want to see them
Right.
just because I worked with them before. Now,
Right.
let's talk a little bit about one thing that I think is important and probably the most difficult thing for actors from the actor's perspective is getting that visibility, right? And that
Right.
sort of visibility and networking all comes into play sort of and gets mushed up together a little bit in this industry. And I want to ask you specifically, how do you like to be what do you feel about networking? How do you like to be reached? Like, do you like to be contacted? How do you like to be contacted? What gets your attention? What's a realistic way that an actor can begin to make industry connections when it comes to networking from your perspective? Because everybody's different. Some people are like, I don't like anybody to reach out to me. How do you work?
So, for some reason, networking has somewhat of a negative connotation in some ways. So
I
I
used to be scared of it. I used to put that down. Networking, I'm not good at it.
Yeah, well, I like to think of it as collaborating, even if we're collaborating in a conversation and learning about each other, you know. And I don't mind being contacted by actors at all, but I prefer to be contacted via an email or, snail mail, and I love to hear what projects you're working on, as opposed to I get a zillion emails new to the area, and can we meet and talk?
Right, or
Okay,
give me a job or consider
right.
me.
Yeah, I understand that. If you're new to the area, I would love to know, why are you new to the area and what else have you worked on? So in that first email, like, send your headshot and resume. You have no idea what projects I'm working on, and there have definitely been times when an email comes in from an actor that has just arrived. I'm like, oh, I have an audition on Friday for a project that you would be right for. But this is somewhat specific to location casting and smaller pools of actors. But as long as you're not um, mean spirited or threatening in any way. A lot of times when we use that language, the other side of the table is there for safety.
Yeah.
that's, that's the reason of the table. As long as you're just sharing, I'm a human, this is what I do, and you're a
Let us know
human.
your personnel. Who are you?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
type.
Yeah. I have no problem being contacted via email or mail. I'm not on the uh, LinkedIn thing yet, but I definitely, when actors submit to projects and I ask for a note, like, let's just say that for this particular role, they need to, I don't know, be able to ride a horse or whatever the thing is. And I usually ask for notes. I love to hear a little bit about yourself and whatever that particular skill is that we're looking for in that. As I said, I work on a lot of period pieces, so horseback riding is a thing. I would love to hear about it, as opposed to getting a submission and having no idea how this would work. So I'm not at all opposed to being contacted by actors.
That's awesome. Now you brought up headshots a little bit. I wonder what, from your perspective, what do you think actors should understand about their headshots and how we view them in the part that they play in like the casting process? Because people are always asking me about headshots. What should I do? What should it be about? How do you guys actually look at headshots? Do you really look at headshots? And I'm like, yeah, we look at them.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Yeah.
how, that's your business card.
Let's get real about, all right, let's just use breakdown services that you've put a breakdown out on. I have my page set up to see 100 actors on a page. So that is 100 headshots right there. And to make that work for yourself, what you're doing in this process is taking headshots away as opposed to necessarily clicking on the ones that you love right away.
Right.
Is that how you do it too? Like I'm narrowing and narrowing and narrowing.
Hmm.
So the headshots that keep staying on the page are the interesting ones of the people that I would like to meet. And the ones that are not staying on the page, um, either it's not a great photograph, like there's issues with being able to see them.
Like too wide, it's a wide shot.
Yeah, exactly. And now I understand when you're first starting out and you don't necessarily know what a headshot is and you can't afford a headshot. And I understand all of that. But you should be looking at the camera. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
and like people in a car,
A side
profile.
profile, and I'm like, well, it's great to see what you look like from the side. I'd love to see a front view.
Exactly. So that's just basic stuff. Make sure that it's you, you know. And then another thing that it does not have to be the most perfect, gorgeous glamour shot photo of you. It's you as a and I work mostly in film
Hmm.
and not in commercials. So it needs to be an interesting photo of who you actually look like. And I hope that that's who you look like when I see your self tape or see you in person in the room. Um, some photos are amazing and they should be on your mom's mantelpiece.
Yeah,
That's where they belong. They're not a headshot.
exactly. Now we are knee deep in this online virtual casting
Yeah,
self-tape world, and I get a lot of actors always coming up to me. I get so much conflicting information about self-tapes and stuff, and I get a lot of questions. So I just want to ask you maybe one or two really quick ones.
sure.
Like, one that I get a lot is, well, because you work in film, this would be a great question. Are actors required to be off book for self-tape auditions?
I don't think you're required to be uh, off book for self tape auditions, but it's very obvious if your sides are taped up right, you
Yeah.
know. And I I think that your sides should be out of the shot. Like you could have them, but I'm gonna tell you, it has been an equalizer, and many people are off book for their self tapes. That's why I appreciate with the strike, like what the limits are in terms of pages
Yeah.
required. And my rules personally for my own office and my projects is unless it is the lead of a feature, you know, 4 pages of sides is the maximum.
Yeah.
And that could be 2 scenes or 3 scenes within those 4 pages.
Mhm.
And I this will sound weird, but this is the way I work. I don't love to give those sides more, like 48 hours is a sweet spot for giving
Yeah.
the sides, maybe a little bit earlier than that. But if it's later than 48 hours, people are not going to be off book. And if it's longer than that, they are agonizing over it for so long that it
They
becomes so
lose.
precious, you know, and then they can't get off of where they've landed when you're meeting them virtually. So for me, I have found that about 48 hours is a sweet spot for sending sides to actors, and that it is not more than 4 pages. I'm well aware that auditioning is a big part of your job as an actor. So I know that you're working on multiple projects at a time. So I understand that. And if you reach out to me and say, um, I don't want everyone to do this all the time. It shouldn't be your go-to. But if you're having a hard time meeting a deadline because of four other projects that you're working on, I get that. I understand that. So let me know, but also please make your self-tape easy to watch, easy to download. No the if it's password protected, give me the password.
Yeah.
And also, if you make it expire at a certain time, just like you went a little longer with your auditions, please make it a little bit longer than the day that the submission was due on, because
Yeah.
I might need to show it to someone else, and I might have watched it, but I don't have my link together to the ultimate decision makers yet, and need to be able to make sure that that can happen.
And another question that I get is that, like, are actors required to buy lighting and camera gear for self-tape productions and stuff, and how much should they spend on it? Like, what's your thought on that?
So I have multiple thoughts on this because I have seen really good actors be on location and literally not have the ability to do to have a package and all of that.
Hmm.
So you're looking for the good acting. And I have seen actors get roles when, you know, they have made the best that they can make out of whatever situation. And when you know that you're viewing actors from New York, a lot of times it's going to be in front of their door because
Yeah.
that's the longest space in their apartment.
Yeah.
I see that all the time. I definitely don't think you need to go to a place to be taped. You don't need to pay anybody to do that for you. But I also think, we don't want to see your unmade bed,
Right.
you know, and I love seeing everything that is behind you now. But
Mhm.
if you were doing a self tape audition, I would not want to have that because
It's
I'd be
pulling
looking at all the
focus.
posters. Yeah, you need to be in the middle so that we're seeing you. So, but I get if you're just starting out and you don't have a great light. But the one thing that, or I'm going to say two things that are most important: being able to hear you and not shadows. If the
Right.
lighting isn't great, that's okay. But if it's completely in shadows and it's hard to see, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And I think it's harder in commercials. I think there's a higher level of expecting everything to look fancy when you're casting commercials.
But you make a good point, though, that as casting directors, especially because we're in this self-tape online world right now, I want the actors to understand we are understanding.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
we do know that you have a life, and we're asking you to stop and become a production team right in the middle of it. And you
Exactly.
just have to communicate to us if there's any difficulty and that you're trying to get at, I think keeping that line of communication open to us and not being scared to think that we're like, well, if you can't do it, then you're not even going to audition. We're not like that at all. I know I'm not like that. I'm like, what's going on with you? Okay,
Right.
well, let's see how we can make this work for you. I've seen a lot of people where I ran into this girl recently in the movie theater, and I was like, I recognize you from someplace. And she was like, I recognize you too. And I was like, you did that audition for me in your hotel room with your daughter when it came in last minute. And I remember you because you did such a good job. And I was trying to be so patient because I knew she was like, that's right. I was like, we understand that type of stuff. I didn't look at her and be like, oh, why is she in a hotel room with a kid? Or
Yeah.
like people that are in their cars
Yeah.
sometimes or in the parking lot.
I had an actor who was auditioning. It was actually the callback, a virtual callback, and they were on a camping trip in West Virginia. And literally the only place that they had light was in their car. Like they could turn the light on in the car, and they met the director and the producer that way because our session was like from, I don't know, 5 to 9 in the evening, and they were whitewater rafting that whole day and didn't have any reception. Finally, they found the place where they could be light. You wouldn't hear the camp noises. and they got the role. They were great, but we had to make it work for that, you
What a
know.
commitment from that actor, though. I really like
I
that.
was so impressed. Yeah, exactly.
Me too.
And it's great to have a great reader, but I also understand if you're away and it's your child that's going to be reading, or your grandmother or whoever, we it didn't used to be this way. I think it's been a great equalizer for everyone. We understand that now. And especially like during the lockdown when it was hard to even have other people around you, that's when when casting directors really stopped being so fussy about the reader. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, you want a good reader that is going to elevate the project whenever possible. But when it's not, we understand that.
Yeah, just explain it to us, right?
Right, right.
Now, how do you feel about union and non-union actors? People always ask about when should I join the union and should I join the union? How do you feel about that?
So I will have a different opinion than many other casting directors that you work with, because I work in the Mid Atlantic,
Mhm.
and we don't have a ton of SAG work here. So like Phi Corps is completely different here than it is in other places, and I'll explain that a little bit. I don't think if you are in the Mid Atlantic or just graduating from school or in other markets that doesn't have a ton of work, don't don't look at joining the union as fast as you can. Get as much work on your resume before you join. It's expensive to join the union. It's a privilege to be able to join the union when you're not in one of the major markets, because that means you're traveling for work a lot more, and it takes you out of other work that you could be getting really good experience on. So I get wanting to be in the union, and I understand what the union does for actors, and it's a great thing when it's great, but in some locations it's not helpful yet in your career. And then some actors that have had very long union careers move back to Virginia to take care of a relative, or decide to have a bigger yard or whatever the reason. They will then go Phi Corps because we don't have that amount of work.
Mm.
And I understand that for them. And especially in Virginia, which is a right to work state, um, they can work Phi Corps, as their Phi Corps, they can work on non-union work. I work on a lot of student films. The ability to have amazing actors work with these students is such a blessing. And if they weren't Phi Corps, or if they weren't maintaining non-union status, those students wouldn't have the access to those great actors.
Yeah, they be sitting
So
staring in the space.
exactly, they're learning from them. They're sharing their space. They're networking. Their group of collaborators is getting larger. So I'm not the right person for a New York actor to answer that question for.
No, but this is for everybody. So I think that is an excellent answer that you just gave, because I asked someone else that I interviewed, and she kind of had the same perspectives as you did.
Yeah,
She's in commercials, and she was like, listen, some people just have to work.
yeah,
And you join the union and then you sitting around because everything all of a sudden has gone non-union, and now you can't pay your bills or even get a side job. What
right.
are you going to do? And I don't want to be in that position to tell somebody, oh, sorry, but it's just
Yeah,
sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. I tell
yeah,
people join Phi Corps, just don't talk about it a lot.
yeah. Don't talk about it. I agree. Like I had heard some actors that were saying, who live in my area, I
Mhm.
want to join the union so I can become Phi Corps immediately. I'm like, that is exactly
Yeah.
that's not what it's for. Phi Corps is there for a reason, and that's not the reason for it. And I think the answer is, as an actor, you'll know when it's right for you to join the union. When you're continue and Virginia, as many other states, are right to work states. So you don't become a must join in Virginia. You can work on, it's like hitting a foul ball. You could work on 999 projects and you will never become a must join there. So
Boy. Well, listen, it was really a delight talking to you. I've got one more quick fun question for you.
yes.
We've got so much information, so much stuff now that comes at us. You got any recommendations? Like, what was the last film, show, TV show, or theater thing that you saw that you really loved?
Barbie.
Did you? I haven't seen
Oh,
it yet. I cannot wait. I
you
can't.
have to see it.
Oh, it's
And we
on my
can
list. I'm thinking
Okay.
next month, actually.
Are you? Okay. So in the past 2 weeks, I've seen all the big, I've seen Oppenheimer, Barbie,
I want
and
to see Oppenheimer so bad, but I want to see it in 70 millimeter, and
I,
it's sold out here till past September.
well, buy the ticket. It's worth, I saw it on IMAX and it was amazing. And then I've also seen Indiana Jones and I've seen Mission Impossible. So those are the
I
four.
heard that that was amazing. Everybody that has seen Mission Impossible said it was incredible, which is kind of sad that it didn't get any traction because of Barbenheimer. But you
Yeah.
know what? It's gonna have a life of its own when it comes to streaming, because I can't wait to see it. And literally, no one has seen it. They've all been blown away by it.
I had a blast. The first half an hour is a lot of exposition and a lot, it's just talky, talky, talky. So I could have jumped in, you
I
know,
like talkie though, so that's okay.
well, then see Oppenheimer. That's amazing.
Okay, good.
All right. But I loved it. I had a blast. I mean, the train scene in Mission Impossible is like no train scene you've ever seen before. And you're like,
I
WTF,
could
how
not
did they
wait.
yeah,
I
it was
could.
a lot of fun. It was a lot. And there's just strong women doing amazing stunts and acting in that. Oh my gosh. It was kind of like when I first saw the TV series Vikings, I'm like, what is
Oh
this thing?
yeah.
I've never seen women be able to do all these stunts before. So that was really fun. But then I'm on the Richmond International Film Festival grand jury.
Oh,
So
wow,
I just
I'm jealous.
well, I've just seen 19 feature films that are all independent from all over the world. And I have to say, like, I can equate some of those films to my experience in these massive films that I've just seen in the last 2 weeks. So I
That's,
can't name any names because the
that's
festival hasn't happened
okay.
yet. But to be just as excited by an indie project from some country in Europe, is thrilling. And there's good filmmaking being made around the world. And the one thing I'll say is maybe what the strike will do, from both the writers and the actors' perspective, is allow Americans to start making good independent features again. Because
Yeah. Remember the 80s and the 90s where we used to get those really great small thrill, like, you know what I was about? You're gonna laugh. A couple of days ago, me and my friend was watching Pacific Heights. Do you remember that, with Melanie Griffith, Matthew
yes,
Keaton, and
yes,
Michael Keaton? And we were like, that was such a good little thriller that you would never see in the movie theaters nowadays.
you wouldn't. But those three actors that you just named are all excellent actors. Those actors are all on TV now, right?
Yeah.
And so we need a space. I love TV. I love everything that's going on in TV is amazing. Streaming frustrates me, but I wish that those actors were now also doing independent features,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you so much for sharing this amazing insight that you have with everybody. It's amazing. And I hope that everybody takes to heart everything that she says and puts it in your back pocket, and remember to use it when you need to and don't use it when you don't. That's just like the advice that I give you. Not everything is going to be perfect for you at that moment, but you collect it and you use it when you need to. And thank you, Anne, so much for sharing,
Thank you.
giving your time and passing on this wonderful information. And I'll see everybody next time on Casting Directors Say,
What?
hey, she got it, everybody. Bye. I'll see you next time.
Bye.